What's up, guys? Back in the shop working on the Sedan because PittRace is coming up. I believe it's 2 weeks from now. Don't quote me on that, but we got some time. I want to take this time to really go through the entire car. And I mean, check everything, nut and bolt, every single bolt, make sure nothing's loose, make sure nothing's worn out, fix anything that needs to be fixed, inspect pretty much every square inch of this car because I want to go into PittRace with undeniable reliability. And that was kind of what made this season so good, knock on wood, is the car has been incredibly reliable. And you know, a lot of that, like I said, is just efforts throughout the last few seasons, especially last winter, just really going through the whole car, making sure the reliability has been increased. 2 weeks until PittRace, checking over the entire car. I did actually a lot of that already yesterday. When I mean check, I mean like everything. I checked bearings, suspension, hubs, knuckles, the entire engine bay, checked all the harnesses, make sure no bolts are loose. I just installed the intake manifold, make sure the plenum bolts are tight. The throttle body should be good now that we have the throttle body soft adapter. Checked fluid levels. I already swapped transmission oil. The steering rack, make sure the steering rack's tight. Inner and outer tie rods are good. I'm talking everything. And I can go through a full list of stuff I'm checking, but unfortunately, I think that would take way too long. And you know, same thing with the rear. There's a lot of stuff in the rear of this car that you need to check. Obviously, the trailing arms are a pretty big weak point on these cars, but I've reinforced them so many times now that they're practically bulletproof. Bearings is good on this side. Check the calipers, pads, checking all the shocks, make sure there's no fluid leaking out of them. And I could keep talking. This video would be way too long with all the stuff I've already checked. But anyway, we're gonna do really tiny mod. Two things actually. One, I've been suffering with, in my opinion, a pretty soft brake pedal because once again, we're running Integra Type R ABS. It's a cross feed system, which means one master feeds the right front and then the opposite left rear, and the other master feeds the opposite corners, which means you have to run identical masters on the pedal box. You have to lock it to 50-50. And those masters that I chose were 7/10. It causes a pretty, nice soft pedal for a pedal box, but the travel is just so long that it's kind of, I don't know, it's a little concerning to me. I'm not a huge fan of it. I dug into my spares bin and I looked at what masters I do have available, and I have a 5/8, which would be smaller than a 7/10. We don't want that. But I have a 13th, 16th inch master. So that means I have to buy one more of these to have a pair. So that's gonna be a swap probably later this week once I get the part. The other little tiny mod that I'm doing is a little cute little duct right here. So this duct is actually going to feed fresh air into the intake filter, which is in my front wheel well. I've been looking at the data from the past few events, and my IATs actually have been going up. The old setup that I had, intake chamber, and then I had a big duct that went right to the front. I got rid of that because one, the filter always got extremely dirty, especially if I was behind somebody during a race and they would kick up a lot of dirt, just completely clog the filter. And you could actually feel a loss in horsepower if the filter got really dirty. Really easy to lose a race that way. And then the second issue is if it rains and you don't cover that, you're just gonna completely fill your filter with water. What I did after we did all the engine mods for Mid-Ohio is I just put the filter in this section and it was completely closed off. Obviously, this caused an increase in IATs. So what I did for Mid-Ohio is I had two little ducts and they kind of fed around the bumper into the filter. They were basically positioned right here. It was extremely tough to route the hoses. The frame rail goes right here, so you have to like snake it up around the bar and then snake it down below. It was extremely difficult to make work. And I kind of thought about other solutions. Maybe I could do another little duct right here that kind of goes straight up. But then I was like, wait, I already have two openings in the front lip. I can use a small portion of it for a duct. It's for like dust collection systems inside a shop for like woodworking. And it's just to a 2.5 inch hose. So you're gonna have air that feeds into here. It's gonna get connected to a hose on the backside that I don't have yet, unfortunately. And then it's gonna go feed into this chamber right here. Now, how am I going to feed that into the intake? So I made a vertical wall. You're gonna sit on this side of the frame rail, and then you're gonna connect the hose to this guy, and then that should point directly at the filter. And that's just gonna provide the filter with a little bit of fresh air, fresh, cold air from the front of the car. And the opening, it's not really that big to where it's gonna be a concern for water or debris. It's just gonna be enough to lower the IATs. At Mid-Ohio, when I had the 2 ducts in the front, I think the IATs were like 100. And then Lime Rock and Autobahn, I ran this bumper completely closed off, no feed for the intake. And I think it went up to like 110, 120. Also, it could be because the track conditions were a little bit hotter at those events, but I do think having at least a little bit of air going into the filter is gonna be a benefit. And I know people are gonna ask, you know, what were these holes for? These are actually for an oil cooler that I used to run last season and the season before. So I had this all open, and this fed like a really big, long, rectangular oil cooler. The oil cooler was a little bit overkill, and then a lot more complication just running the lines. And you know, we're doing 15-minute sprint races. Yeah, my oil temp gets pretty hot, but like I'm not usually concerned with anything above like 250. As you guys probably have saw, using the OEM RSX water to oil cooler. Obviously not as efficient as a big, massive oil cooler, but it's gonna get the job done for the sprint races. Now it's gonna be repurposed as a little duct. I think it looks cool, like a little offset, you know, duct action on the right side of the bumper. It's gonna look pretty sick. That's basically it. Just get that hose, 2.5-inch hose. You can get it off Amazon Prime, Summit, and you know, really anywhere. But yeah, it's gonna be a little tight around the brake ducts because the brake duct hose kind of sneaks in this way, but it should be all right. It should clear, and then once it's all together, then it's fine. You don't really need to worry about it. But yeah, the fact that, you know, it's coming out directly into the filter, I think that's gonna be pretty good. So should help lower ITBs. I wish I had ITBs. Should lower should lower IATs. There we go. All right, you join me underneath the car, and I got my hose. Amazon Prime, 1-day shipping. 2.5-inch hose going to the duct off the front end, and then right into the side panel that has basically it's like a 2.5 to 3-inch adapter, but I just have it zip tied, feeding some fresh air right into the intake. Is this gonna help? I'm not really sure. Help IATs a little bit. How much that's gonna improve lap times? Not really sure. I add a little bit of foam seal right here just because it's pretty sharp. And then this brake duct hose essentially sits right underneath it like that, and then it connects to the splitter. So all done underneath here. Let's get this splitter on. Absolutely gorgeous day outside. It's finally cooled down a little bit. It's sunny, it's a good day. Unfortunately, we're working on probably my least favorite part of the car is the pedal box, because we got some new masters today. So the pedal box is pretty sweet, but they're really annoying to work with. One, it's buried inside the car. Getting to the Masters, pain in the butt. Leaks a bunch of brake fluid in your engine or in your interior. Luckily, I have a solution for that. The Masters themselves are extremely expensive. I just bought a Master for, I think it's like 250 bucks. And the problem with pedal boxes is you're always changing masters. I've had the pedal box in this car since I built it, and to this day, 3 years later, I'm still buying masters to fine tune that pedal balance. Currently in the car, I have a 7/10 front and a 7/10 rear, but like I've said a million times, because I run ABS, it's a cross-feed system, you gotta match them, and then you gotta lock the bias bar at 50/50. So I need to run them in pairs and they need to be identical. And I've ran 7/10 for most of this season, ever since I went with the ABS, because I had two 7/10 masters and they felt pretty good. But before Autobahn, if you guys remember, I upgraded to TL calipers. I think they're actually 2nd gen TL calipers. I got corrected by Lugod. These rear calipers have the biggest diameter piston. I don't recall what it is on top of your head, but you can Google it. They're huge. So when you go with a bigger piston in the caliper, your brake pedal is essentially going to get softer. You're gonna have a longer stroke. I've been running into the issue, even before I went with this rear caliper, that the pedal was already pretty soft. Now, after this, the pedal is extremely soft. And it was kind of a problem at Autobahn where I just had to press the pedal so far. And it gets kind of sketchy when you go into brake zones and you just keep pushing that pedal and it keeps going towards the firewall. That's where these guys are coming in. I already had a 13/16 and I just bought another 13/16 and I'm going to swap both of these to these guys, and that should make the brake pedal significantly stiffer. Swapping to these is always annoying. So that's one of my major complaints with the pedal box. It ain't cheap. Ain't cheap. These masters, the amount of masters that I have, and there's another one in this box, probably cost more than the actual pedal box assembly itself. So let me set up a time lapse for this. Gonna have to start by unhooking the feed from the reservoir, and then this is the feed to the calipers. And then yeah, I need to basically pull this pin. I need to unscrew it from the front and struggle with this probably for the next hour. So I didn't really talk about the reasoning as to why I'm going with bigger masters. In any brake system, you're trying to hit a target PSI on the brake lines to basically ride that threshold braking limit. And as an experienced race car driver, you know, your foot kind of naturally finds that zone. And you can kind of play with the pedal feel to achieve that PSI. With smaller masters like I have currently right now, so a pair of 7/10s, it's a lot less force on the brake pedal because they're smaller masters, but to achieve that PSI, it has a much longer stroke. So it takes me a little bit longer to get to that threshold braking point. Pedal feel for me, it's a little bit too soft. By going up in master cylinder size, so these are a pair of 13/16 or like 0.81625, have a much shorter stroke. But to achieve that same PSI, the force on the pedal is gonna be much higher. It's gonna be a little bit harder for me to press, but the stroke is gonna be a lot less. And I think that's exactly what I need in this brake system, because right now, the stroke is way too long, because if you watch my videos, my foot's going way far back, and it gets harder to brake because the further this pedal moves back, the less leverage I have, right? Because your foot's extending. You know, my foot's almost fully extended by the time I'm hitting that optimal brake point on that pedal. So I think these will be a much better upgrade. All right, so this is before. That's about max pressure. Actually, I have a brake pressure sensor, and we can actually see
Channel 3.
how far my foot goes at a specific pressure. All right, so we're looking at this guy right here. So boom. On track, if we look at data, I'm usually hitting 1500 PSI. I can't even do that. But right here, this is 1300 PSI. And that's how far my foot is. So, pretty far back. That's what 1500 PSI looks like. All right, what I like to use is one of my lids. It's like a clear Tupperware. It's a Sterlite little bin. And this is perfect because I can slide this puppy right underneath my pedal box, underneath the masters, and if anything drips, it gets caught by my tray and it doesn't end up in the car. Probably should have drained the masters first. F that up. So the problem I'm dealing with right now is that I can't move this bolt any further out, which means I can't get this master out. So I'm just trying to hammer as much as I can to create some kind of clearance. All right, now it's important to count how many turns we're at. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. About 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9. So another important thing, these lengths have to be the same, which means I have to screw it in the same amount here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, now this. Go back. Now, depending on how much you screw these masters into this clevis, determines where the position of this throttle pedal ends up being. You screw it in too much, because it's on the opposite end of the pivot point, it's gonna push this further back. You screw it out too little, you're risking bending those rods or messing up the thread, so I wouldn't do that either. Right here seems to be a good spot, so I can tighten these masters down, and at least the masters are in. All right. Pedal box in. And that only took 40 minutes. And most of it was me hammering a big old dent in my trans tunnel. Exhaust tunnel, whatever you want to call it. That's done. That sucked. That took like an hour. I hate dealing with brake fluid. It's always miserable. It was a pain in the butt, but I got it all done. But yeah, just a few little tips and tricks about pedal boxes in general. Number one, you want to make sure none of your lines are rubbing. And then I got these nice P-clamps that kind of helps route all the lines up and away. I'm using a Penny & Giles position sensor for the throttle, so that's how I do my drive-by wire. We've all seen what happens when you wear out a grip tape at CMP. It continues to be an issue. I wear the grip tape out pretty quick, but here's a little thing that I did to protect myself just in case it does wear out on the edge. For those maybe not aware, my foot slipped off the brake pedal. I was throttle, and then I went to the brake, and my foot slipped off because of the grip tape wearing away on the edge. So what I actually did is I took a file to the edge of that brake pedal, and I scored it. So if my foot does get on this edge, at least I have some grip there. I should probably replace the grip tape on the clutch pedal, but this one's not as critical. It's the brake pedal that you want to make sure is good to go. A race bred components for a plate that I managed to modify to make fit. So it literally just sits on top of this pedal box like so. And then I have these aluminum risers that sit on the back side of this plate. So pretty nice and simple setup. Yeah, that's it. Verified that my master's on the back, they're equal, left and right. and should be ready to go. All I need to do is bleed the system, and then the pedal box is set. Another cool thing to note, I made this frame myself. I hand drilled every one of these holes. It allows me to move the pedal box fore and aft, depending on, you know, where I'm sitting in the car. So same thing with the seat. I have PCI mounts mounted to custom seat frames, so I can move the seat where I want. I can move the pedal box where I want, and then depending on the spacer, I can move this forward and back as well. But yeah, it's really nice being able to move it. I almost have it all the way back, but right now it's in a pretty good position. And if you're wondering why I had to go underfoot, it's because if all your masters are in the back, you run out of room real quick. So I'm a tall guy, I'm 6'2", so I need the masters under my feet. Even though I sit this far back, as you can see, the pedals, they're still pretty far forward. Yeah, that's it. Like I said, I hate working on that pedal box. It'd probably be easier for me to completely take it out and swap the masters, but I don't like doing things the harder way early and then easy after. I like doing it the hard way all the way through, if that makes any sense. But I'm done for the day. Gonna finish this beer, hang out inside. I got hockey tonight, it's Thursday. We are about 1 week away from PittRace. I'm excited. Everything else is done on the car. Like I said, just gotta bleed the brakes, do alignment, and then hopefully this weekend get it in the trailer and not worry about pit until Wednesday. See you guys later.